First of all, we have a finished object. I mean, look, that's a great representation of the drape. It's perfect. I'm very scattered today. I apologize for that.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello, you guys. I am Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. This is my regular Saturday podcast. And if you're new here, I'm coming to you from a small farm in Connecticut. I started knitting in January of this year, 2023, and just completely fell in love with it and really just wanted to talk about it some more. I don't have knitting friends in my area, and so I just wanted a chance to talk more and dive in deeper on all of my knitting projects. So thanks so much for joining me here today. First things first, I just want to address the fact that I've been a little under the weather this week, and I'm sure that you could hear it in my voice, but I really didn't want to miss a week. I'm feeling better today, so I just wanted to hop on here, so I hope you don't mind the sound of my voice today. I have some really exciting updates. You may have noticed that I am wearing one of them. When we left off last, I said that my goal was to finish knitting this sweater before we spoke here today, and I not only finished it, but also have had the chance to block it. And obviously here I am wearing it. I haven't yet had a chance to do finished object photos, but if you keep an eye out on my Instagram, you should see them before the next podcast goes up, and I'll try to remember to include them in next podcast after we've taken them and done all that. So for context, what I am wearing right now is a finished object. First of all, we have a finished object. When's the last time I got to say that? So this is a finished object, and it was my test knit for Sari Nordland. I actually was watching Sari's podcast the other day, and I heard her say she called it the Lukka pullover. And so this is my test knit that I've been calling Like, but I think it's something more similar to Lukka pullover. And it is this really beautiful chevron stripes. Actually, as I'm sitting here, the chevrons are all pretty much below the bust. So I'll have to show some cutaways, but I did finish it. I soaked and blocked it, which I need to get more pins for my blocking because the stitch pattern has this really pretty like vertical stripe detail that you only see when you kind of stretch the fabric a little bit. So this was the first time I had to really block something where I was kind of tugging on the fabric some more. So I didn't have quite enough pins to do that in both the body and the sleeves. So I actually soaked and blocked the whole thing, but primarily focused on blocking with the pins on the body and stretching that out. Especially because, as I expressed before, the ribbing detail on the bottom was super singed, and I did not want that at all. I also did manage to take some before I blocked it, so I will put those in here too, but it was super singed on the body. So my priority when I blocked it was to give the body and that ribbing a good stretch. So I didn't actually have any pins in the sleeves when I blocked it after soaking. And then that sat on the blocking boards for like 2 days. After that, just this morning, I actually took a steamer to the sleeves. So I moved all of the pins to the sleeves so that I could give those a good stretch and open up all of the vertical stripe in the sleeves here. And I just seamed those and they came out, perfectly. I also, and you'll see in the before, the sleeves were super, super long, and I got kind of nervous that they were going to be too long. And she does mention in the pattern that the sleeves are intended to hit you kind of at the knuckle. And while I wanted that, I didn't want it to be crazy long. I didn't think I'd like it if I had to cuff the sleeves, but also because I did mine in white, I really didn't want it to be so long that it like lived in the palm of my hand. rather than me being able to pull and stretch it to my knuckles, that's completely fine with me. So that's what I've got going on here. But I thought with the white fabric, if it just lived in the palm of my hand, this probably get like yucky fast. So I steam blocked the sleeve to open them up and hopefully suck in the length a little bit. And when I tell you this came out, I think literally perfectly, the whole fit of the sweater, like exactly what I wanted. It's dead on perfect. So the sleeves shrunk up a little bit, which is great because they are so open on me that I wouldn't want them to be like hanging like this all the time. So the steaming worked out really great. I'm glad that I gave the whole thing a good soak and then went back with the steam, because I think that the fiber that I used here it was 2 strands that I purchased at Webb's, America's Yarn store, and they were on a cone. I had the 100% wool as well as the alpaca silk. And the way that this fabric blocked out was, I mean, it's perfect. I can't wait to knit something else out of this. So whether you're steaming to block it, that came out great. Soaking to block it, that came out great. I also just this morning finally sewed the collar down, which I wanted to wait until it was blocked so that if this was going to stretch out any, it could. I do think that I wound up just sewing it down with a crochet slip stitch. And I mostly did that out of laziness, to be honest. I also just kind of was in the mood for a change up. Do I feel like this could be slightly more open? Yes. And I'm going to attribute that entirely to the slip stitch that I did, because I just did this part this morning as well. I just gave that another steam block after the slip stitch, but I didn't actually stretch it out any when I was doing that. So I do feel like this could probably use just a touch more of a block, which I think is like the theme, right? No, the last thing I had, I wanted it to be a little more snug. I just wish that this was a little bit looser. I love the look of this fabric right now. I love the feel of it. Right now, I don't have anything on underneath as another layer. So I am kind of testing out how I feel with this on my skin. No more barking. No more. You're being wild. No, what is that? No. So even when I was working on this, I was noticing that the alpaca, I think, is what gives this just a little bit of a prickliness. And I'm not really sensitive to wool to fiber. I don't typically find a rustic yarn to bother me. But I do think just a little bit, and it's really just at like my neck and on my kind of collarbone here. It's a little bit prickly. So we'll see how I feel about that. But other than that, I highly recommend this yarn combo. I think it made just the drapiest and most lightweight, but still soft and cozy and stretchy fabric. I think I'm going to wear the crap out of this. And as far as my boucle goes, like I told you guys when I was knitting this, it was getting like a little bit of distortion where the boucle had met the wool. But now that it's all blocked out, it all just kind of married together really nicely. I just think that this really, I mean, look, that's a great representation of the drape. It's just super drapey. It's super comfy. The fit is exactly what I wanted. I genuinely could not be happier with this piece overall. So, yay, a finished object. Now, in regards to whips, still glossing past my Corsaven cardigan by, I'm still going to say Tanya Hodney. I'm working on pronunciations. I'm still going to gloss past that. I made the executive decision this week to just put that aside for right now. I have plans for what I want to knit for the rest of the year. And if I want them to be done by the time that I do, I need to hyper focus on some projects and just get them off the needles. So that was the way that I decided to operate for the past week. And that literally meant taking the needles out of the sleeve of my Corsaven cardigan so that I could put them into another whip. And that felt like a really bold choice to make that felt super permanent when I took those needles out. But I had my shorties on one of these sleeves and then I needed it for my other whip. So I said, you know what? Pull the needles out. Let's just make the active choice to put this aside for right now. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. In the meantime, let me show you where those needles went, where those shorties went. We have like a little bit of a plot twist here. Now, I did declare myself as part of Team Snail Stitches. But like I said, I've been a little under the weather, which left me a lot of time to knit. And so knit I did. Check this out, you guys. I even nearly finished ranunculus. Did I plan for this to happen? No. Did I want this to happen? Absolutely. Since I saw you last week, I was talking about the fact that I thought I was about ready to quit on the body and head to the sleeves. And when I tried it on, I decided to go ahead and do that. So since I saw you last, I have knit 2 sleeves to their full length. Each of them got their I-cord bind off, which was a first for me. And I'll get into that in a second. I also have gone ahead and done the majority of the ribbing at the body once the sleeves were both done. And I basically only have, all I have left to do is try this on, make sure it's at the right length. If I need any more ribbing, I can go ahead and do that. And then this is just getting a standard bind off and pattern. So not even a tubular bind off, nothing freaky there, just simple bind off. So if everything goes according to plan, this could be done tonight. And certainly I'll be wearing it in the next podcast. Very excited. So let's talk through a couple of things. When we spoke last, I realized that I was possibly going to run into an issue with putting the sleeve stitches back on my needles because I didn't have any of my first skein of yarn to do helical knitting. And while I haven't seen an issue between the dyes or the dye lots or just the way that the dye looks in my 3 skeins, I was really nervous that a line of demarcation right here would just be so obvious. And I got to thinking, and then I realized with one of my false starts of the ranunculus, I snipped the yarn and just kept working from that ball. So I actually had a good chunk of yoke sitting on just tubes that was from my first skein. So I went ahead and I ripped that out, balled it up, split it into 2, and I was able to do helical knitting throughout the majority of the sleeves with that yarn. I wonder if I could even just see. Yeah, so it looks like pretty much half of the sleeve was done with the helical knitting, and then the rest was finished in my 3rd skein of yarn. So glad I remembered to do that. Honestly, this was the second time doing helical knitting for me. The first time was just in the body of this same sweater. And the first time I did it, I found like it was really stunting my progress. But in the sleeves, I actually thought it was fun. It kind of gave me something, that potato chippiness of looking forward to the little, I don't know, I guess the part where you pick up the next strand of yarn. I enjoyed kind of looking forward to that in the small circumference knitting, and it made it really fun and potato chippy to go along. So that was great. I was so glad that I was able to find that. And then the sleeves are worked without any decreases until you get to the cuff. So, I mean, I was just flying at that point and did the typical thing where you pop in a stitch marker every 10 rows so that on the second sleeve, it was just easy peasy. I also had been asking you guys what you thought about doing the diagonal cuff, which if you have the ranunculus pattern, it's part of the pattern. It's one of the options. So the whole time I'm knitting the sleeves, I was like, I'm not doing this diagonal cuff. I just want this stupid thing off of my needles. And then I thought, I have this thing with knitting, and this tends to be my advice to new knitters as well. But I think something that we can apply if you're more experienced or whatever phase of your knitting you're in. When you're going through a pattern, like 99% of this is familiar, mindless. 99% of this is stockinette in the round. And so while it would be so easy to just go ahead and knit to the end, do my decreases, bind off, and call it a day, there's only so much that is new. You might as well take the extra hour of your life and do the challenging thing. And so that is what I decided to do. I went ahead and I did the diagonal cuff. So the diagonal cuff is just German short rows so that, okay, so this sleeve has no short row shaping in it. And you could see that when I hold my arm up like this, you're getting this straight line, which also means that if I have my arm down, the same straight line is there. And by adding the German short rows, you're creating a little bit of like a pizza slice so that this point is actually just about an inch further down, and then it kind of angles in. And so when you put your arm down,
Editing Nora here to tell you that the way that I explained this was really weird, but the photo that I'm showing here, you can see how the cuff kind of angles down and creates like that little, I don't know, like longer on the outside look. And I'm going to show you the little pizza slice and how that works in with the short rows. And I hope that that makes more sense than how I tried the first time.
I hope that that makes sense. So I figured that was worth giving a shot. And so when you're looking at it, if I'm holding the sleeve up straight, you could see this kind of curve. This is the little pizza slice this is your crust and the tip of your pizza that is going to give just this little bit of a slope when it's held out straight. See how that is a little bit curved. It also adds to that slight like ballooniness of the cuff, which I really loved the look of. So it was so easy. Once I have it blocked, I'll decide if I think it was actually worth it. But I decided to go ahead and do it because why not? It's such a small part of this sweater. Again, 99% of this is just easy peasy stockinette in the round. Why wouldn't I take the time to add in just that little bit of something new, something to learn? And now I could say that I did it. So that was a little bit, I was doing all this on Halloween. So this was spooky stitches. The other thing that was brand new to me was an I-cord bind off. And I had fun with that. Way easier than I thought that was going to be. I'm not sure what I had worked up in my head when I heard people speak of an I-cord bind off, but I found it to be really fun and so simple. If you know how to do a standard bind off, and if you know how to stockinette, you could do an I-cord bind off. Nothing crazy there. So I really enjoyed that. I love the look of it. And all I have left to do is graft my I-cord bind off together so that those are good. So that's all I have left to do on both of the sleeves. Like I said, I did about 2 inches of the ribbing at the hem, and I'm going to try it on and see if I want to do any more. I actually found with this fabric, which by the way, the Malabrigo Sussurro fabric, which is I believe it's wool, silk, and linen blend. The fabric on this is just incredible. The drape is nuts. Like, this is going to be a favorite of mine for the fabric alone. Of course, the color we already know I'm obsessed with, but the fabric is just so drapey. But something that's kind of made difficult is trying it on with try-it-on tubing. The fabric is so lightweight that it just kind of like flows, and I can't get that try-it-on tubing to actually relax and sit and show me a length without me tugging on it. So I've struggled just a little bit with trying to figure out how long I want to knit this. But I do think that I've been trying to hold it up to some of my shirts that I really like the fit of. And if I'm not there already, I'm so close. So this will be getting finished today. We'll be getting blocked tonight. And I will be wearing this in my next episode. And at that point, I'll give you my firm review on, am I a ranunculus girly or not? I just like the fabric a lot. It's really pretty. It's beautiful. And I have said that I have 3 skeins of the Malabrigo Sussurro. I've been knitting this in the size 10 way off gauge. I've been working on, I think, US 7. Yep, US 7 4.5 millimeter needles for the whole thing. I also, by the way, decided to not drop down needle size for the ribbing because I really don't want this to cinch in at all. And especially because this is the silk, linen, and wool blend. It doesn't have a ton of stretch to it. So I was really afraid of it cinching and then not being able to stretch it back out. So I just decided to keep with my standard size needles the whole way through. I also did not increase needle size for the I-cord bind off, although I've heard people say that you should do that. Again, because this doesn't have a ton of stretch, I was just really mindful of the fact that people say that the I-cord could come out too tight, and I just was really careful not to knit it tightly, and it came out perfectly. So because the silk and the linen don't have that bounce back or that stretch, I was just really nervous of it pulling too loose or too tight, and it's perfect. It's perfect. So I'm just so happy with that. So I will measure it for you now. Of the 3 skeins that I purchased of the Malabrigo Sussurro, I have used every last drop of the first and second skeins. The only thing that has not been included in this was my original swatch. But other than that, I have knit every single piece of skeins 1 and 2. Currently on my 3rd skein, all I have left are 20 grams of yarn. And I imagine that by the time I finish the hem, we're still gonna have at least 15 grams left. I really don't think that this is gonna be much longer. So I think I've done a great job of using up all of this yarn. I can't recommend this yarn enough. Now that's me saying that without having worn this. I do think that it tends to get a little fuzzy and maybe a little pilly, but we'll just have to see. But as far as just the fabric goes, when I originally cast this on, I said that I was not going for a sweater. That wasn't how I was thinking of this. I was thinking of it as a long sleeve shirt, and I think that's exactly what I've gotten, and I genuinely can't wait to own this. I can't wait to work with this yarn again. I think for a summer fiber, this has been really great to work with. I haven't had any trouble with this on my hands. I just love this fiber. It makes for the prettiest, just lightweight drapey, the way that you could just ball this up and it turns into nothing. It's honestly incredible. And the color speaks for itself. It has this glow about it. I remember seeing the Frank Ochre colorway in the Sussurro versus the Rios. The Rios has a little bit more depth to it, where the Sussurro has this, it was slightly more like pastel-y. It's not a pastel color by any means, but compared to the Rios, it had a little bit less like saturation to it, but it has the glow that makes up for it. When I tell you that this literally shimmers and shines, almost to the point when you're working on it, it feels like your hands pick up this like a highlighter, like a makeup highlighter. It just has this shimmer to it, and it must be that silk. Um, it's just really, it's pretty. It's pretty. I want to see what other colors it comes in, and for a summer fiber or for that transitional season, for something that's going to fit a little more close to skin, I just can't recommend the fiber enough for the drape, for the lightness, and just for the way that this fabric knits up. And especially I think on the 4.5 millimeter needles, it's just like, it's perfection. I'm so excited. So next week, this will be done. This just reminded me, though, that I wanted to point out that I have a ton of yarn left over from this main color. Let me grab those. So I've mentioned before with this sweater, the boucle that I used was thrifted yarn that I had in stash, and the way in which I have an abundance of that yarn didn't even make a dent in that stash. So I have absolutely no idea how much yarn I used in the boucle. However, these are the two cones that I used for the wool and the alpaca silk that I held together for the main color of this fabric. I know that when I purchased these, I thought specifically with the alpaca silk that I had almost just enough for this project. And I have so much left over. I'm going to weigh them on the cones right now. I don't have a cone for reference that I could subtract. So just bear in mind that the quantities I'm going to list now are including the weight of the cone. So the alpaca silk, there's still 107 grams left over. So let's just say that there's 100 grams still left of the alpaca silk. And then in the wool, there's 250 grams left over. So if you have recommendations of what I could make with the remainder of these two yarns, I'd love to hear it. I'm not sure. Is that enough for an accessory? Probably, right? People make socks out of 100 grams. So maybe I could get like a little scarf or a cowl. No, I don't want a scarf or a cowl because I'll get makeup all over it. So don't recommend a scarf or a cowl for these. But I don't know, a hat. See them like mittens, white mittens, that seems counterintuitive. Like everything's just going to get dirty. So if you have an idea, or do you think it's best if I just knit something out of these and then dye it because they're both in this natural colorway? So tons of yarn still left over, even though I thought I wasn't going to have, not that I didn't think I was going to have enough, but I thought I was going to have just enough to make this sweater. So that goes to show you for the main color from knitting the size 7 in the Looka pullover. I'm very scattered today. I apologize for that. So currently that's where I'm at with my finished object, my nearly finished object, and then the Corsavin cardigan, I am going to put back on the needles. So we left off where I got a few basket weave rows done on that cardigan, and let's move into plans. Let's get organized here for a second. In the next week after you see this video, you will also be seeing a pattern roundup video go live, and it's very relevant to my plans for my next whip. In the meantime, I'm gonna be working on the Corsavin cardigan. However, once I get my next cast on the needles, my plan for the Corsavin cardigan is to do a basket weave a day. At the very least, I could always do more if I'm in the mood for it, but because of the schedule that I have for my plans, I want to make sure that my time and effort is going back into a more monogamous style of knitting. So I have two really exciting cast-ons that are coming up, and I'm going to reserve that excitement a little bit because I do want to put together a end of your knitting plans video, and then you're gonna see the pattern roundup video coming out hopefully on Tuesday is the goal. So that's kind of what's going to be in the works for the next couple of weeks. And so it's just really nice that I'm getting these other things off the needles now. Very excited. So hopefully by the next podcast, you will see that pattern roundup go up. There's going to be finished object photos, like I said, on my Instagram at akanoraknits for both the Licca and the ranunculus. I'm hoping to get both of those photos taken this weekend. Why, hello. Want to say hi? Were you grumpy? You grumpy bear? So yeah, we'll hopefully get all those finished object photos taken this weekend and then edited and uploaded before next podcast. And then hopefully in the next podcast, I should have a new cast on. I think for now I'm going to reserve because the pattern roundup is going to help me determine which pattern I'm actually casting on because I haven't decided yet. What I know right now is that there's a vest in my future, and I will go grab the yarn right now so I could tease that a little bit and tell you what the yarn is and where it came from. What's the matter, baby? Osie's feeling very needy today, guys. You want to come here? Oh, she's our yarn sniffer. You want to sniff? All right, certified yarn sniffer is here and ready to sniff the yarns. What do you think? It smells like nothing. You want to sniff this one? No. Okay. So my next cast on is going to be a Thanksgiving vest. I feel like this is going to sound really random, but you have to understand that I bought this yarn months ago. So I love to thrift for yarn, and I had found 3 skeins of this beautiful yarn. It is superwash alpaca sock yarn, and it is from the brand Packapeds. And the colorway, I don't think it said it. Oh, no, it is. It says Harvest. So I found this yarn in a thrift store. I had 3 skeins of this, and I purchased the 3 skeins for $1 a piece. So $3 for 300 grams of this 20% superfine alpaca, 65% superwash wool, and 15% nylon yarn. And I believe when I looked it up, these skeins, I could look it up now. Yeah, so actually it looks like you could still even purchase this colorway, and each skein is about $27.50. So that's about $82.50 worth of yarn that I bought for $3. Now, in all honesty, the colorway isn't my favorite. Maybe for a pair of socks, sure, but there were 3 skeins of it, and I knew I wanted a garment out of this. And knowing that there were only 3 skeins, I figured a vest was going to be a good way to use up the yarn. This was going to be the first time I've ever worked with hand-dyed yarn. Is the Malabrigo Tessuto considered hand-dyed? I feel like no, but correct me if I'm wrong. But this is the first time I'm going to be working with variegated yarn. There's a lot of firsts going on here. And the colorway really kind of freaks me out because it's got this super bright orange. Then you've got these olivey greens, which maybe if it was only this half of the yarn, I would feel better about the colorway. It's this half that scares me. So I have no idea what to expect here. This is very much an experiment for me. And that's why I also wanted the low commitment of a vest, no sleeves. It should be a quicker knit. I love the look of textured knits, but I think because of the variegated colorway, stockinette's going to be the way to go. Not to mention I have a very limited time frame, and I'm just playing. How often do we get to just play and just make something for the sake of, like, who cares how this turns out? So for all those reasons combined, I decided to grab some Drops Kids Silk, and this wasn't the original colorway that I wanted. However, back over the summer, before I did my All Good dress, I placed one big order from Linda Hobby with like all of the yarn that I needed for the rest of the year, and this was in there. They didn't have the colorway that I really wanted, which I believe was called Toffee, and that was more of a orangey, ochre brown colorway, where this is definitely more of a true just kind of chocolate brown. But my thought was, we're playing. I'm experimenting here. If this turns out so ugly and awful, I don't even care. Really, it doesn't bother me. I just wanted to play with yarn. So I'm combining these two to hopefully tone down some of this really bright orange. Hopefully, my goal is to muddle the colors a little bit in the variegation. And I'm going to make a vest. I don't know which one I'm going to make yet. That's why I wanted to do the pattern roundup of different vests. However, in that pattern roundup, I have all the vests that I'm like gushing over when it comes to the texture and cables, just to kind of scratch that itch for myself, but also some stockinette options that I'm actually considering making. So at the moment right now, have not filmed that video yet, have no idea what pattern I'm going to go for. All I know is that I want to play around and just have fun with yarn. So we'll see. Obviously, when I get the ranunculus done, I have the course oven to kind of keep me busy until this gets casted on, but we're really cutting it close to Thanksgiving because, yeah, the idea is that I'll wear this at Thanksgiving. So I definitely have to get this cast on soon. But we'll just see. We're going to see. I'm also not so concerned if it doesn't get done by the time of Thanksgiving. That's just the ideal. So we shall see how this goes. I'm thinking now, so I have 3 skeins of this. It's variegated hand-dyed yarn. So I'm sure that I'm supposed to be doing some sort of helical knitting. However, how am I going to helical knit with 3 skeins of yarn and get the most balanced look? What seems like it makes the most sense in my head right now is maybe to split one of the skeins. Helical knit. No. I'm not sure yet. I'll figure it out, but again, it could come out ugly. I don't care. It's an experiment. This is just for fun. So this is the yarn combination. It's going to be made into some sort of a vest. That is the next cast on. There's another really exciting cast on that I have to follow that pretty closely and hopefully work through the rest of the year. But again, I'm reserving all of that nitty gritty for my fall knitting plans or end of year knitting plans video, which should be coming out in the next 2 weeks. But that is the next cast on. We shall see. And I just thought it'd be fun to show you guys some yarn that I was able to score in the thrifting world. So those are the plans. No acquisitions. I've been sick. I haven't been anywhere. And that's pretty much all I have. I do want to say before I go, first of all, I'm still getting through reading all of your comments on last week's podcast. And I want to just say huge, huge thank you to everyone who took the time to share their experience and let me know that they could relate to what I was saying and that they valued my honesty in what I was saying. That was a very vulnerable and sort of challenging thing to decide to do, to open up about my personal experience at Rhinebeck and just the way that I really felt about it. So I was just glad that I was able to find people who were also looking for someone to say those things and know that their experience, if it was similar to mine, was not an isolated incident. So thank you so much to all of you who have commented on that video. So many comments combined with me just not feeling so great. I have been reading a few a day, and if I haven't responded, I've been liking them as I've read them. And I just want to say thank you so much for going out of your way to comment on that video. I also want to say a huge thank you just one more time to everyone who participated in the Spooky Stitches that was a fun way for us to kind of come together and try something new. And like I told you, we got spooky with those things in my ranunculus. Now that all of that is over and we're in the month of November, which by the way, happy November. We've changed up the setup a little bit. I don't know if you could tell, I have this cute little like cornucopia full of yarn over here. But we're out of spooky season and we're into grateful season. So if there's anything that you wanted to share about reasons why you're grateful to the craft of knitting, I'd love to hear down below. Maybe the way that it has helped you. I am happy to share with you guys that I have found knitting. I'm a hobbyist. I love to have a hobby. I love to have something, my hands getting to do something. And I don't think I've ever quite deep dived as far as I have into knitting. And the reason I have is because it just helps. I love having something on the needle, something to look forward to, something to kind of keep me at ease when I'm watching TV or when I'm hanging out. And I'm not someone who takes my knitting out to dinner. I'm not someone who's like knitting in, the line waiting for a prescription at the pharmacy. Like, I'm not that person. But I love having it as something to kind of ground me and keep my mind focused, keep my mind into, whatever it is that I'm doing. It keeps me from getting too worked up in situations when I might otherwise normally. And so I'm really grateful to have found knitting for those reasons, but also for having this community that we're still growing. And just, I can't believe how quickly we've put together so many people who are like-minded. It's so cool. So I'm grateful to knitting for those reasons and just for this channel. So if you want to share a reason why you're grateful for knitting, I'd love to hear it down below. I also want to say that we are using the hashtag snail stitches to keep up with everyone's knitting. And I apologize that my snail stitches kind of took off. My little snail was cruising this week. But that's just what happens when you're under the weather, right? So those are just the little housekeeping things I wanted to address. And other than that, you guys, I hope that you're having a great week. Hope you're enjoying the chilly weather. And I can't wait to share with you next week where we're at with new cast-ons and new finished objects. What a fun and exciting time. So that's all I have for you guys this week. If you enjoyed what you saw, I would love it if you would hit the thumbs up, the subscribe thingy, the little bell thing, all those things that YouTube likes for you to do. And if you want to keep up in more real time with my finished object photos, you can follow me over on Instagram at akanoraknits. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. Big ol' thanks for watching and see you on the next one, Saturday mornings. All right, you guys. Bye.